calling to order the special meeting of the board. This process that we'll be using for today's meeting is authorized by Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-2920 that he issued on March 17th to address the COVID-19 public health emergency. The meeting is occurring by teleconference with all board members, legal counsel, and housing commission staff participating by phone. And while we are grateful for your participation, we do ask that if you are not speaking or presenting, that you mute your phone to save everybody some potential embarrassment. Because the board is meeting by teleconference, I will be asking each board member to indicate your presence via a roll call, which I will begin now. Vice Chair Klumpner?
Here.
Commissioner Akers?
I am here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Hester?
Present.
Commissioner Hubbard?
Present.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Present.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. In addition, throughout the meeting, anyone who wishes to speak will need to identify themselves by their name and position each time they begin their remarks, just so we have clarity on who is speaking when. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may listen to the audio of today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agenda of today's meeting included a link to the website to the Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, where the public can access the audio streaming for today's meeting. And the public has been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comment to the board through an online comment form. A link to this form was also included on the agenda for today's meeting, which is posted on the website, www.sdhc.org, as of Friday, April 24th, 2020. The agenda and the public comment form explain that comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record if they are submitted by 4 p.m. as of yesterday, April 30th. No public comments about items on the agenda were submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday. In addition, the agenda and the public comment form explain that non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. No non-agenda public comments were submitted for today's meeting. Okay. Now I will begin by asking if any commissioners would like to make any comments to get us started. When I state your name, please share your comments or simply say no comment. Vice Chair Ryan Klumpner.
No comment.
Commissioner Akers.
No comment.
Commissioner Davis.
No comment.
Commissioner Hester.
No comment.
Commissioner Hubbard.
No comment.
Commissioner Mitchell.
No comment.
Thank you. For the record, this is Stephanie Benvenuto. The next item that's on the agenda is our report for the President and CEO, but because of some of those deadlines and limited time from some of the commissioners that I mentioned earlier, we are going to move that report down toward the end of the agenda. So I would like to ask for approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 6th and a special meeting of April 17th, 2020. So, commissioners, I'll state your name. Please indicate if you have any changes or comments about the minutes, if you are making a motion or second to approve the minutes, and then your vote on the minutes. So let's give this a go. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Akers.
I will second that motion and I vote to approve.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
No comment.
Okay.
Vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hester.
Approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubbard.
Approve.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mitchell.
I approve.
Thank you. This is Stephanie Benvenuto. We have a motion by Vice Chair Klumpner and a second by Commissioner Akers to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of March 6, 2020 and the special meeting of April 17, 2020. All of the commissioners have voted in favor of the motion and are very good at remembering directions, even though this all doesn't apply to everybody. I have proposed that the following items be placed on the consent agenda for approval this morning. Item 100, 101, and 102. We did not have any public comments submitted for these items. So we'll go through this drill again. Commissioners, please indicate if you have any changes or comments about the proposed agenda, consent agenda, if you're making a motion or second to approve the items on the consent agenda, and your vote in favor or opposed to the consent agenda items. Vice Chair Ryan-Klempner.
Motion to approve the consent agenda and vote yes.
This is kind of like asking you guys to all like pat your head, rub your stomach, walk backwards at the same time. Commissioner Akers.
I second the motion and I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hester.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubbard. Thank you.
No changes, and I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell.
I approve.
Thank you. This is Chair Benvenuto. We have a motion by Vice Chair Klempner, second by Commissioner Akers to approve the consent agenda items. All of the commissioners have voted in favor. The motion carries. Item 103, delegation of multifamily housing development hardship request is being withdrawn from the agenda and will not be presented this morning. No public comments were submitted for item 103 to advance to today's meeting. So our next item is item 104, the proposed fiscal year 2021 Affordable Housing Fund annual plan. We did not have any public comments submitted for item 104. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Housing Commission Chief Financial Officer Tracy McDermott, who will be presenting the report. This PowerPoint presentation was emailed to the commissioners on Tuesday, April 28th. It's also posted on the commission's website. So commissioners, please follow along, and Tracy, you can begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Chair Benvenuto, Vice Chair Klempner, and Commissioners. I'm Tracy McDermott, Chief Financial Officer. This morning, I'm presenting to you the proposed fiscal year 2021 Affordable Housing Fund annual plan. Next slide. The City of San Diego's Affordable Housing Fund was created in 2003 and is composed of two funding sources. First, the Housing Trust Fund was established in 1990. It consists of revenue from housing impact fees on commercial development and loan repayments. The fee revenue helps provide affordable housing for low-wage workers who will be employed at commercial developments such as hotels and restaurants. Second, the Inclusionary Housing Fund was established in 2003. It consists of revenue from the collection of fees on residential development and from loan repayments. The developer has the option either to build affordable housing units or pay fees that will be used to the creation and preservation of affordable rental housing and assist for first-time home buyers. Now, moving on to slide 3, this displays the history of collections for both funds. Now, moving on to 4, these are our outcomes since inception. The Affordable Housing Fund has assisted San Diegans experiencing homelessness, the creation and preservation of affordable housing units, and households that become first-time home buyers. Let's move on to slide 5. This displays a timeline of the major milestones for the Affordable Housing Fund. Now on slide 6, let's discuss our new ordinance and fee changes. Last December, the San Diego City Council approved amendments to the Inclusionary Housing Fund Ordinance. These updates will be phased over 5 years beginning on July 1st, 2020. Slide 6 shows the percentage of residential units that the developers will be required to set aside as affordable housing in each year for the next 5 years. In the alternative, the ordinance allows developers to pay inclusionary housing fees in lieu of developing affordable units. This slide also shows the fees that will apply in each year for the next 5 years. Now on slide 7, we summarize the sources of funds for the Affordable Housing Fund once more. Moving on to slide 8, we have the model programs and the results of our outreach. Affordable housing funds may be allocated to programs identified in the list of model programs. However, funds are not required to be allocated to all the model programs. The changes to the model programs for fiscal year 2021 include adding the Flexible Housing Program, which provides one-time financial assistance to help San Diegans experiencing homelessness overcome immediate barriers to obtain housing. And then there's the Shallow Subsidy Program, which provides shallow, flat rental assistance for San Diegans experiencing homelessness. The proposed allocation and model programs were presented to 3 community planning groups in January and February. Now on slide 9, we have the current model programs to which funds have been allocated or activity has recently occurred. Then on slide 10, examples of affordable housing, of newly constructed affordable housing developments built with financing that include affordable housing fund revenues. Now we have slide 11. Let's talk about our projected funding for the fiscal year 2021 Affordable Housing Fund annual plan. We anticipate close to $68 million in fiscal year 2021. And this is composed of $6 million of new collections and loan payments, as well as a fund balance of close to $62 million. Now, the fund balance consists primarily of funds committed in previous years that have not yet been expended, such as loans to developments that are under construction. So now let's move to slide 12. This is projected funding in a pie graph form. These are the funding sources that are discussed on slide 11 and are depicted in this pie graph. And as you can see, the fund balance is 91% of the funding available. And that fund balance is primarily committed for rental housing finance activities. Let's move on to slide 13. This is projected allocations in a pie graph form. 89% is committed to rental housing finance activities such as gap financing for affordable rental housing production. Slide 14 is just the detail behind the pie graph. Rental housing finance, home ownership, some detail behind our homeless housing initiatives, and a small portion set aside for administration. Now let's move on to slide 15. With the proposed allocation of funds for fiscal 2021, less than 1% of the Affordable Housing Fund, or $72,000, is not yet committed. And we conclude on slide 16. Today I'm asking the board to recommend that the City Council approve the Affordable Housing Fund Annual Plan Program activity allocation of $67.8 million in the model programs and authorize the President and Chief Executive Officer to reallocate funds among the model programs in response to market demands and opportunities. That concludes the presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is Stephanie Benvenuto again. Commissioners, we'll run this drill again. Please ask any questions you might have about the Affordable Housing Fund annual plan. And while you have the proverbial mic, please let us know if you'd like to make a motion or a second. If you do not have any questions, please state no questions. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Great job, Tracy. This is quite the experience coordinating this conference call with my computer screen and following along. I don't have any questions, and I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Akers.
Yeah, I will second that motion and also vote to approve. I just wanted to, my only question would be for the last point about that we may see the President and CEO reallocate funds in the coming year. And I'm just wondering if we could just get a maybe an example of what that would look like, or if and when our group, this board, would get information on any of those reallocations.
Great question. I'll turn it over to Housing Commission staff.
This is Rick Gentry, President and CEO. What I might ask is Chief Counsel Christensen, Chuck, if you would talk about the dollar limits, so the ability to do some changes insofar as individual contracts are, and then later insofar as the budget goes too, since I'm assuming that same question will come up then.
All right, yes, thank you. Charles Christensen, General Counsel for the San Diego Housing Commission. Each year when the budget's approved, the Housing Authority gives authority to both to this board and to the CEO for changes in the budget. The amount of change given to the board is $500,000, and the amount given to the CEO is $250,000. CEO also has the ability to enter into contracts up to $250,000. I think that answers the question. Was there anything else that you wanted covered?
No, that was exactly it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Move to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, so we'll put you down as a vote in favor. Commissioner Hester.
Approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubbard.
No questions, and aye. Sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell.
I have one question I was a little confused on in the presentation. It said 49.3 million is committed to affordable housing production. And I was trying to find the number. I mean, we say it's committed to production. Can someone just tell me can we put that in a simple statement for public consumption? That's committed to housing production through loans of a certain number of units between 2017 and 2020. And then I think there was a number in the presentation where she talked about there's some unallocated monies. Was that $6 million? I just want to get clarification on those two issues before I vote.
This is Tracy McDermott, the Chief Financial Officer. So actually, if you turn to slide 15.
Yep, that's where I am.
So slide 15, the only thing that's really not allocated is the $72,000 per our plan. And
okay.
So if you start from the top, so 67.7 is what we have available.
Yep.
And then the 24.2 are the board approved loans have gone out to different developers.
Yep.
I have not been funded yet. They've gone through the commission board and possibly the housing authority board. And then on the next line, the 25 million.
25 million. Yep.
We're in the process of doing award letters to developers, and they will be coming through the board to get the final approval for loans, very similar to what happened with the board approved loans. And then in 21, we have allocated 6.4 at this point to have the same thing happen in 21. And then the program funds.
So where's the 6 point? Tracy, that's where I was confused. So it says in 21, I see 287 units represents new closings and 82 units in development. So you're saying that's $6 million?
I think the closing also is regarding the 20 NOFA. The closing is related to the actual developers that will close financing in that fiscal year, which is different than award. So there's a process. First we are allocated the funds. Then we go out for our NOFA. We let everyone know we have the funds. Then we issue a letter.
Okay.
Issue a letter. Then the developer, in conjunction with the Housing Commission, we go to the board and say, this is the package. Then 6 months to a year later, they get the final financing and the loan is issued in tranches. And then they begin the actual execution of building the affordable units. So it takes.
Yeah, I see that. There's a little bit of confusion because even below you say companion unit loans, inclusionary, you say you say 500,000 up to 5 units. I just am trying to get my head around, and we can take this offline around the number of units that they expected. So that's where I was a little bit confused. So there's I think 72,000 you said is out. Everything is spoken for except for a tiny bit of the total.
That's correct.
Okay.
And as you can see by looking at this allocation, most of it is for rental housing production.
Okay. I will offer my approval of the plan.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. This is Stephanie Benvenuto again. I had one quick question, possibly two actually. With the fund balance primarily being committed to developers, I'm curious if we are, and this may be a premature question, so please let me know if that's the case. I'm curious how confident we are, given the changing economic landscape that we face now, that the awards thus far, or those commitments, will carry through to result in actual production, and if there is any sort of contingency planning to make sure that those funds are recommitted if they do become available again in a very quick and efficient manner.
This is Rick Gentry, CEO, and I might address that one. Each time we make commitments, there is some chance, regardless of whatever broader economic set of circumstances may be going on, there's always a chance that property might not get their other allocations. If you remember, generally the way it works is that the Housing Commission is one of the first in, if not the first in order for the developer to secure other finance, primarily tax credits awarded out of Sacramento. And typically we'll allow a developer 2 shots at that before they are removed and the money's committed elsewhere. And typically we will have developers waiting in line for the next opportunity. So generally that's the answer to the question, is we award the money we have to who we think have the best chances of success based on time of application to us. And then as people drop out for whatever reason, we go to the next in line. And that's what we'll pursue here as well.
Great, thank you. And then as a follow-up to that point, do we know if this is going to be a ballpark, but do we know guesstimate-wise what the amount of housing production is currently in our pipeline that we cannot fund because we don't have enough money? Meaning, I know in the past we had all kinds of projects that were in the queue to apply for, step 1 of the funding with us, and we just couldn't get to them because of demand and limited resources. I'm curious if we have an idea about what that number is today.
This is Gentry again. Could I ask either Jeff Davis or Emily Jacobs, either of you might have a ballpark idea? If you don't guess, we'll get a number back to the chair. Jeff or Emily?
Sure, this is Emily Jacobs, Rick. That was roughly about $20 million oversubscribed in the last NOFA. It was north of that, but I don't have the specific amount.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. It's just nice for us to keep in mind that even with, $67 million, substantial amount of money, even with that, we still have excess need. So keeping that in mind. But thank you. I would also like to add, this is Stephanie Benvenuto again, I'd like to add my vote in favor of the motion, which now carries unanimously. Our final agenda item this morning was the item 105, the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. We did not have any public comments submitted for item 105, and Chief of Staff Jeff Davis and the Chief Financial Officer Tracy McDermott will be presenting this item. Their PowerPoint was also emailed to commissioners on Tuesday, April 28th, and is available on the website. Jeff and Tracy, we'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Chair Benvenuto, Vice Chair Klumpner, and Commissioners. I'm Jeff Davis, the Chief of Staff, and with me again is Tracy McDermott, our Chief Financial Officer. If you have your PowerPoint with you, if you could turn to slide 2, you'll see that we'll be providing you a brief overview of some of the major highlights of our proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. And then Tracy will walk you through the objectives and deliverables and the agency's proposed sources and uses of funds in detail. Slide 4. Today we're proposing a budget of $515 million. This is a 14% increase from our current budget and is the largest budget in the Housing Commission's history. The increase reflects additional state funding for homelessness programs the Housing Commission administers for the city, as well as funds committed to the potential acquisition of hotels or single-room occupancy properties to provide rapid rehousing for San Diegans experiencing homelessness. Such acquisitions would be subject to further review by this board and the Housing Authority. In addition, funds are being budgeted for higher levels of rental subsidies for our families who have been impacted by COVID-19, as well as making funds available to target the preservation of currently affordable housing in jeopardy of being lost. This preservation initiative is an exciting new effort that has been championed by this board and the Housing Authority. This budget is based on conservative estimates and continues to advance our programs that have a positive impact on the lives of San Diegans who have lower incomes or those who are experiencing homelessness. Slide 5. Like many companies and governmental agencies, we prepared this budget amid the unexpected and unprecedented impact of COVID-19 in the city. As the operational and financial impacts of this pandemic continue to unfold, the budget we are proposing to you today may require revisions in the coming months. Slide 6. The Housing Commission's leadership role in programs to address homelessness, which began back in November of 2014 with the launch of Housing First San Diego, will continue with this budget. As slide 6 shows, our budget for homelessness programs has increased steadily in the last 5 years. In fiscal year 2021, again for the second year in a row, expenditures on homelessness programs are budgeted to exceed $100 million. Slide 7. In short, the proposed budget will enable the Housing Commission to continue temporary programs to help maintain stable housing for our program participants and residents who have been affected by COVID-19, help more than 15,000 low-income households pay their rent, rehabilitate and manage our affordable rental housing units, preserve affordable housing in the city of San Diego, and administer programs that address the homelessness crisis in the city. Tracy will now share the details of the budget with you.
Thank you, Jeff. We're co-chairing in 2 different locations. So slide 9, we developed the proposed fiscal year 21 budget with the agency's mission in mind. Now moving on to slide 10, to provide rental assistance with federal funding, the Housing Commission will continue to implement higher rental assistance payment standards that went into effect in January and will be applied to households in our program throughout fiscal year 2021. The payment standard is used to establish the maximum amount of rental assistance subsidy that a Section 8 housing choice voucher could provide for a family. The increased payment standards help voucher families better afford the units where they currently reside, as well as allow for more opportunities should they choose to move. In addition, the Housing Commission will continue the Landlord Partnership Program that started last year, which provides financial and support incentives to landlords who rent to families in our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Now on slide 11, to create and preserve affordable housing, this proposed budget commits close to $22 million towards the preservation of currently affordable rental housing in the city of San Diego that otherwise may be at risk of losing its affordability. In addition, more than $19 million is set aside for the potential acquisition of hotels or single-room occupancy properties, $10 million for the purpose of rapid rehousing for San Diegans experiencing homelessness, and $11 million for the rehabilitation of Housing Commission-owned properties. We also set aside funds to provide loans to developers for the creation of new affordable rental housing units, We discussed that in Affordable Housing Fund plans. Now, on slide 12, addressing homelessness. The budget supports the continuation of the current phase of the Housing Commission's Homelessness Action Plan, Housing First San Diego. This slide shows the programs included in this initiative. Now on slide 13, addressing homelessness again, the Housing Commission also administers the City of San Diego's Homelessness Shelters and Service Programs. These programs include the city's 4 bridge shelters, 3 storage centers, safe parking, and the city's Housing Navigation Center, which opened in December 2019. Now let's move on to sources of funds, and we'll go to slide 15. This slide compares the total funding sources for fiscal year 2021 and 2020. Total funding will increase by close to $63 million, or about 14%. Most of this increase is from $42 million in new revenue. The majority of the new revenue increase is due to additional federal funding from the Moving to Work program and new revenue from the state's Homeless Emergency Aid Program, or HEAP, and the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention, or HAP funds, awarded to the City of San Diego, which the Housing Commission will administer. The new revenue will be offset by a reduction in the receipt of Community Development Block Grant Affordable Housing Revolving Loan Funds. It's also important to point out that the fiscal year 2021 budget includes funds as program reserves that were committed to affordable housing activities in fiscal 2020 are expected to be expended in fiscal year 2021. Now on slide 16, we have new revenues on a pie graph by major category. And as you can see, that more than 81% is from federal funding, the blue area. Now let's go to slide 18 and discuss funding uses by fiscal year. This is a year-over-year comparison of funding uses by major category. Expenses increased by $67 million, or 19%, over fiscal year 2020. And this increase is primarily due to $45 million housing program expense increase, and this is due to 2 reasons. One, $32 million for housing assistance payments, also known as HAP, as we continue the expansion of Choice Communities Initiative, which provides incentives to families to move into areas of high opportunity, and also to address tenant hardships as a result of COVID-19, as well as a $13 million increase in loans to be funded in 2021. Also, $22 million is dedicated to preserve affordable housing in San Diego, and we have $10 million for the rapid rehousing programs to be combined with the potential acquisition of hotels or single-room occupancy properties, offset by $11 million decrease in acquisitions over last year. Now let's move on to slide 19. That's funding uses by fiscal division. This pie chart depicts total funding uses, not including reserves, by major division. The majority of the funding uses in fiscal year 2021, 53%, are in the rental assistance division, shown in the blue area on the chart. Now, Jeff will go over staffing and homelessness programs on slide 20.
Thank you, Tracy. So we're on slide 20 now. The budget includes the addition of staff to support expanded homelessness initiatives, including the greatly expanded rapid rehousing program and our homelessness services contract administration, and also to support the agency's growing operational needs. Slide 21. As the city has turned to the Housing Commission to help address homelessness in recent years, our expenditures for homelessness programs have increased steadily. And this chart illustrates for you the Housing Commission's growing investment towards homelessness over the last 5 years. The Housing Commission's budgeted expenditures by major homelessness programs in fiscal year 2021 will be close to $112 million. Today, we are requesting your approval of the fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $515 million. This concludes our presentation. Tracy and I, along with staff, are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. We will run, this is Stephanie Benvenuto. We're going to run through our commissioners again, but I'd like to go slightly out of order, given that I know there is a time sensitivity for Commissioner Akers. So Commissioner Akers, I'd like to start with you. Do you have any questions? Would you like to make a motion?
I appreciate that. And I'll just, for housekeeping's sake, I'm going to set myself a hard deadline. I will be off the call at 9:54. So if I don't speak up between now and then, that's where I'm going. And I thank you all for making this happen today and adjusting to my schedule. Two questions. The first is about we're allocating $22 million for preservation this year, which I think we all agree is a wonderful thing. I'm just wondering if we've had, I believe it was said that's an increase in what we've done in the past. I'm wondering what the past years have looked like, and I don't need any hard numbers, but I'm just thinking about, for example, like our dollars for homelessness looks like it's nearly doubled in the past 5 years, and I'm wondering just what our preservation dollars have been spent in years past. And then I've got one follow-up question after that.
Well, I will speak up on that. I'm sorry, was somebody else going to speak? So in the past years, we have allocated funds for the preservation of units, but they've been, as it were, sort of one-offs, if you will. We paid down affordability on a couple of projects over the last couple of years that have gone before this board. This is the first year that we've really allocated a substantial amount of funds for this purpose. And it really is in large part because of this board and the Housing Authority, in particular our Council President Gomez, who has really championed this reality that in the recent years we've seen a lot of affordable housing, whether it be restricted affordable housing or just naturally affordable housing, disappear. And so these funds are a new initiative to try to tackle that issue head on.
And Deon, this is Rick Gentry. I'll add that the Housing Commission is developing this year a close to completion of a preservation policy to kind of codify and standardize our approach to this particular arena. And I think a good bit of the background is that a good bit of what is called NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing, has been lost in California over the past couple of decades, and in San Diego as well. We're not nearly as far along in the loss of that as is, say, the Bay Area or Los Angeles, but it's coming. And so as Mr. Davis indicated, as Council President Gomez, this has been a particular concern of hers and well-founded that we, from a staff standpoint, support. So we're setting aside a targeted amount for preservation for the first time, although we've dealt with it in the past, as Jeff said, in an ad hoc way. And this is not unlike the way we began codifying our approach to homelessness about 5 years ago, and which resulted in a lot more of attention to it. And I suspect that something similar will happen here going forward.
Thank you very much. I think I know that quite a few of us have talked about this extensively. Commissioner Akers, and I appreciate that background information. Second question is unrelated. Looking at slide 15 on the breakdown of our funding sources, it looks like we did very well this year in increasing our funding from the state. It looks like an increase of 184%, particularly for that first line in there is we went from $7.5 million to $22 million in FY21. And I'm just curious where such that, did we do really well? Did our teams up in Sacramento really fight hard, or were there more dollars to be had? I'm wondering if just anyone can highlight how and why we got such a wonderful increase in those dollars.
This is Rick, and again, and Deon, I think more than anything, it reflects bigger changes in Sacramento than San Diego. There's more available. And I think that with the state response to COVID-19, there may well be additional opportunities coming, and we're keeping our thumb on the pulse of what's going on in Sacramento to make sure that whatever comes out of there, we have access to. Traditionally, over the years, money from the state to the Housing Commission has been a far distant third in order behind the feds, which has always been more than 80% of our budget, and local funding. So I think this could well be the beginning of a major change in the way the state looks at its responsibilities toward affordable housing needs in California. I certainly do hope so.
Very much appreciate that insight, and congrats to the team for keeping the thumb on the pulse and making things happen. That concludes my questions. I appreciate everyone bringing this forward, and I would make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Akers. And we'll resume our rotation. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Thank you. I'll second the motion. I think one thing I've really come to understand is that this agency is dealing with a realm in which the need is always vastly ahead of what the resources will allow us to do, which means that we're always balancing difficult priorities and difficult decisions, and that shows up most clearly in the budget. I want to commend you guys that this budget, I think, balances those competing priorities very well, especially given all the input that we get from everyone coming from this board to Council President, and the Housing Authority, and all the other stakeholders in this area. I really just, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible here. I really just have one question, and it's related to what Commissioner Akers was saying. So on the preservation front, it sounds like the 19 million and the 22 million, there's a little bit of maybe gray area between the two. Am I thinking of this correctly? Because you mentioned that the 22 million for preservation can be applied to NOAA type scenarios, which it seems like that's also what the 19 million. So am I thinking about this correctly, that both those numbers combined are sort of tackling different ends of the same issue, which is essentially it's all related to depending on kind of how we're categorizing it, it's all related to preservation in one form or another of affordable housing?
And this is Rick Gentry again, and Vice Chair Klumpner, I would not disagree generally with what you just said. I think one of the things I would remind the board is that a budget is not a financial statement. It's a management plan. And it's a target and an estimate. And we encounter the real world, and some of these may change over time. As you heard earlier, that as it changes significantly, we bring items back to you all for budget or program adjustments. But these are targets based on what we think, based on interest currently, and what we think might be opportunities as well. So this could morph as we go forward. For instance, the hotel SRO issue, that's a very new endeavor. As you all know, we're in the first stages of evaluating the first potential tranche of properties there. And that's something that we will manage out as it goes. And we certainly will not, we will certainly, let me put it another way, we will address the issues of affordable housing in San Diego as we have money to do so. And I doubt that there will be an under need for our money, for our sources, and the actual disposition may change over time, but it will come back to you all either for reports where I have the authority to make changes myself, or for approvals where there's a need for programmatic or budgetary adjustment.
Great. Yeah, hopefully the adjustments we're doing are related to increases in funding from the state and the federal government. I'll second the motion and pass the mic, so to speak.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hester?
Vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubbard?
Vote to approve.
And Commissioner Mitchell?
I have a couple of questions and then a request. that can be handled offline, so we don't have to spend any time on this. But I did notice that in the budget for Tracy that there was so the reduction, while we saw an increase from the state on the HAP funds and HEAP and HAP, we are seeing a reduction in CDBG, just the explanation of that, and then where was that money generally allocated, and what did it support mainly? And then again, I think on the question, the next two questions are: can someone on the preservation aspect, if someone outside of this meeting can email me, I want to understand the preservation aspect more. Again, what I hear a lot from the members of the city council, and I agree with them, is a question of, again, what's our baseline? What are we, on the preservation piece? How many units, the rental preservation aspect, because I want to know how we as a board are measuring our progress as the commissioners, and that is hard to track, unless I know where I'm starting. And so, and then the last, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Gentry.
Go ahead, Mitch. Sorry.
And then the third aspect of this is on the increase in the HAP funds. I'd like a little more detail. The explanation that was provided, again, major increase. Mr. Gentry, you have said, and I agree with you 100%, that we can expect to see more money coming in from both the state. Before the economic collapse, I feared from the state, but we expect to see more money coming in from the feds as part of maybe a stimulus package. And with that money with the additional money that comes in from the states or the feds, what line is that going to go to? And is your anticipation, Mr. Gentry? And then, because I know we don't have any idea how much, but where would it go? And obviously, I think it would. The assumption is that funding would be used to acquire new units to add to our stock, but is that a bad assumption? So those are my questions.
There are three questions. Let me ask Jeff, if you would, to address two of them. One is what we did to get the additional funding flowing to us to increase HAP payments to our residents. And then second, if you would, totally separately and differently, would you talk about the vagaries of the CDBG program, where that money comes from, and how it can vary tremendously based on what the city wants? So maybe HAP first and CDBG second, if you would, please.
Certainly. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we appealed the amounts of funding that HUD has been sending to us for our voucher program. We paid for and conducted our own rent survey and was able to demonstrate and prove to HUD that they were undervaluing our market and that we should be receiving more funds from them for our participants. We were successful and received a 14% increase in the amount of HAP that we are receiving. We also received a retroactive payment for the months that it took them to get to the appeal. And some of those funds are being added to this budget in order to cover a number of things, including the additional HAP we expect to see, because we are at this point anticipating 35% of our clients who are working will receive a significant decrease in their income, which will in turn cause us to need to pay more of their rent. So that appeal process was a large part of why we have more HAP dollars. And as far as the CDBG, I think the specifics for the decrease from the previous year to the fiscal year budget you're looking at, we received a $10 million lump sum payment from the city. $5 million of it was for us to rehabilitate the Cortez Hill project, and the other $5 was to put out a NOFA for permanent supportive housing. And the $10 million was a one-time source of funds, and so it's not reflected in this upcoming fiscal year budget.
Okay, so $5 million was to repair and transfer the what was the old Cortez Hill, the YWCA project, to the Housing Commission and restore it. Is that fair assessment?
Yes, it was a partial payment. We were going to cover it was going to be more than $5 million, it was going to be more than $5 million, but they were going to put in their 5 and we were going to put in what was left.
Okay. And then
But if I could, Mr. Mitchell, in a broad sense, the CDBG is not allocated to us by the feds. It goes to the city, and then the city will ask us to step in from time to time to do things that they either don't want to do or don't have as much capacity as we have to do. The HAP money is by formula, and by appealing that will be additional funding ongoing to cover the cost of our rental assistance program here in San Diego.
Yeah, that's great. First of all, I commend the staff on the challenge on how they were assessing and valuing our market. Mr. Gentry, you've been around this business a long time. I guess that's such a surprising statement to hear that we had to go and challenge how they were valuing the California market, which is the most expensive market next to New York in the country. So kudos, but I assume that now that has been challenged, we will see this infusion, the appropriate infusion of dollars going forward based on the new market, based on the new valuation. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. I think two things.
Sir.
Number one, on the numbers that came out of our contracted study that supported us getting HUD to increase the money, that should flow automatically and be in itself be increased by an inflation factor every year, which we can keep up with easily. And it's not always that unusual for the feds simply to get it wrong. And when they do, to their credit, provide a safety valve for locals to come in and contest a funding formula and to present alternate information, which is what we did. I'll also point out, and you should remind this to your county buddies, what we got increased was for the whole region, meaning the county, not just us. So the county housing agency got the benefit of this as well.
Perfect, and I will definitely remind them that because so Mr. Gentry, I mean, something made you guys go and challenge it. Have we been undervalued for years? Is that a fair statement?
I don't know how, this is Gentry again. I don't know how long I would estimate it, but I suspect it was enough time that we figured, well, let me turn the question 180 degrees. And that is, what is it that led us to believe that we were undervalued or underfunded on the program? And that is, over time, the market became more and more difficult to make the voucher program work. And I would estimate, and Jeff, you correct me if I'm wrong, that we began noticing that probably about 3 years or so ago. And when a pattern developed, we decided that it was time to address the issue with HUD because they were not keeping up with what we saw as increases in the market. And as anybody who's out there knows, the increases in rental costs in San Diego have gone up markedly in the last 4 or 5 years. So I wouldn't say this has been a problem going back 10 or 20 years, but probably going back 3, 4, maybe 5. As the market has increased, the funding from HUD has not kept up. And it was the lack of keeping up that was the main basis for the adjustment.
Yeah, no, and that's what I figured. I just make this point to my fellow commissioners that again, kudos to you guys for making the challenge. It's unfortunate that HUD doesn't have an automatic responsibility to adjust to market pressures, because if you think about going back 4 or 5 years, from the end of the Great Recession, which began in 2008, and you can make the assessment that it was we were coming back and starting to recover, and we're recovered by 2012, 2013. You know, you take 2013, you add 5 years, you see where that undervaluation really did have an impact on this market. So again, kudos to you guys for making the request and for impacting the entire region. Hopefully we never fall behind again. And so with that, Chairman Bienvenuto, I will offer my support for the budget. Thank you for the explanations and the patience.
Thank you. This is Stephanie Benvenuto again. I don't have any thoughts or any questions. I'll just say very quickly that I think a lot of the points made by my fellow commissioners are really excellent. This is a positive budget, represents some good times economically in the past, and also I think is probably something that we'll all have to revisit in the nearish future as we come to understand more about what the coronavirus will do to our regional economy. But I do, I say this with the full knowledge that staff is working on this. I'm really excited about the possibility for the Housing Commission to move decisively if the economy does present opportunities in the form of hotel motels or in the form of other properties, including even SROs, to expand our affordable supply. So while this is certainly a daunting challenge economically, I think the coronavirus could present the Housing Commission with an opportunity to move very decisively and use its funding, particularly this strategy around preservation, to increase the affordable housing that we have available in our city at a time when it is very likely that we will see an increased demand because of folks and a changing employment dynamic. So I want to provide my praise to staff and leadership as well. So I will lend my vote in support. We had a motion by Commissioner Akers, a second by Vice Chair Klumpner, and all of the commissioners voted in support, none opposed. And that does conclude the agenda item. We will turn it over to the CEO for his remarks now, which you will remember we moved from the top of the agenda down to the bottom. So Mr. Gentry, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've got a little bit of information I'd like to pass on, which will come from me and Chief of Staff Davis and also Senior Vice President Lisa Jones. This information is not going to come as a surprise to any of you all. I think we have tried from a staff standpoint to keep you all up to date on all the unusual changes that have been going on with the advent of the coronavirus problem in March. But I felt the need to put this on the record to make sure that there was a public understanding of what we're doing. You all will recall that on April the 6th, a Housing Commission Actions Report was emailed to you. And this report summarized steps that the Housing Commission took over the previous month or so to help maintain stable housing for the families we serve and to protect the safety and well-being of our staff. This week, we updated the report to include additional actions which we've taken in the month of April. And the updated report was sent to you yesterday, April the 30th. If you've not had a chance to look at it yet, I encourage you to do so. The Housing Commission staff, with the excellent leadership by our Chief of Staff, Jeff Davis, has done an outstanding job, and I couldn't be more pleased with the way we've responded to this set of problems and with the level of service that we continue to provide to our customer base. We continue to get the job done and to provide high quality service to our customers during this challenging time. What I'd like to do right now, if I could, is ask Mr. Davis, Jeff, if you would, to provide you with a brief update about a very few of our COVID-19 programs and our actions to support staff up to this point in time. Jeff, if you would, please, sir.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Again, this is Jeff Davis, Chief of Staff. As the COVID-19 situation evolved rapidly, we quickly implemented several actions. And just briefly, for the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 program, we put in place hardship policies that enable us to temporarily and importantly quickly provide higher rent assistance for our families who report a decrease in income due to COVID-19. In addition, families that reside in a rental housing unit that is owned or managed by the Housing Commission can receive temporary relief from their rent payments up to full rent forgiveness, again, through a new hardship program. I might add that we implemented a temporary ban on evictions from our properties prior to the City Council adopting the citywide eviction moratorium. We will not terminate anyone from our rental assistance program or our own units during the COVID-19 public health emergency unless they engage in violent criminal behavior or pose a threat to the safety of others in their neighborhood. We also have implemented temporary changes in policies for our permanent supportive housing programs. For example, we now allow these homeless clients to sign documents electronically and submit documents through their service provider instead of requiring in-person meetings and original documents. We have distributed information about these policies to the residents of our properties and our participants by email, by regular mail, and by posting flyers at all of our properties. And we also created a robust COVID-19 page on the Housing Commission's website where details about these and other programs are available. As we serve our valued customers, the safety and well-being of the Housing Commission staff is our highest priority. The majority of our staff have been working from home for more than a month. And I really want to commend our Information Technology Department for working quickly to equip our staff with the necessary remote access and done in really a short amount of time. And I really especially want to commend our staff for the flexibility and the determination that they have demonstrated, allowing us to continue to be able to provide good customer service to our clients. For our staff whose jobs are essential and cannot be performed remotely, we have implemented steps to ensure social distancing and have provided protective equipment to keep them safe. And we're also providing a modest pay increase for employees whose job responsibilities require them to leave their homes and report to our offices or a facility or any assignment in the field, such as the convention center. In addition, employees who telecommunicate are receiving a monthly stipend to help defray business-related expenses, such as internet provider fees, usage, and maintenance of personal equipment and cell phones expenses, etc. And we have temporarily updated our annual leave policies to allow employees who have exhausted their annual leave to use future annual leave to take a necessary time off. And for employees who have leave time available, we have doubled the number of hours for which they can request pay in lieu of annual leave so that they can better support themselves and their extended families. And these are just some of the many steps we've taken as an agency during this crisis to support our employees and their families while continuing to fulfill our responsibility to the low-income families that we're privileged to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. This is Gentry again. And I will say again, Jeff and our entire team of well over 300 staff have done great work. And I could not be more proud of the Housing Commission's organization, the way we've responded to this pandemic. And I'd also like to say a thank you to this board. I think we're in a position to be able to take these actions because of your oversight, your direction, and your own allowance of the room to do the changes as we need to make them. I know I've tried in the last 6 weeks or so to make sure that each of you all understand where we're going, what we're doing. And we're hitting on all cylinders, we truly are. For that, I'm very, very thankful to staff. There's been one part of our staffing that's been unique, though, and that's been a group that's been on the front lines dealing with the homelessness issue and the move of a number of the homeless to the convention center. And for that, I'd like to ask Lisa Jones, if you would please, to give an update on the convention center, our homelessness service situation, and where we are now. Lisa, if you would please.
Good morning, Rick, and good morning, Commissioners. This is Lisa Jones, Senior Vice President of the Homeless Housing Innovations Division. As Jeff mentioned, as the agency responded quickly to the evolving COVID-19 crisis, we also looked to our partners in homeless services and shelter to ensure that they were getting the guidance, direction, and support they needed during this crisis. We began initial planning with our homeless service providers the first week of March, holding our first planning meetings with operators the week of March 9th. And we knew then that we would need to support our operators in preparing for reductions in workforce, disruption of services, and delays in delivery of goods such as sanitation supplies and personal protective equipment. We also understood that evolving CDC and county direction related to congregate living environments would impact our shelter sites. As ongoing dialogue between SDHC, city, and county leadership developed, the mayor and Supervisor Fletcher determined to stand up a Homeless Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, within the city to respond to both the needs of our sheltered and unsheltered homeless populations during this crisis. On March 20th, 2020, the first meeting of the Homelessness EOC was opened by Mayor Faulkner and Supervisor Fletcher. At that time, the mayor tasked a group of individuals from both the city, county, and partners, including Keely Halsey, the mayor's chief of homelessness strategies, Tamara Kohler, the CEO for the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, and myself as the representative from SDHC to develop an implementation plan that could best meet the needs of our current shelter residents while achieving the required social distancing that COVID-19 mitigation imposes, and also determine ways to increase the availability of shelter beds, including critical access to hand washing, sanitation, and health care for those experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Over the following 2 days, the convention center plan developed, and an incident command structure was stood up to support the implementation of the project. This structure follows the same command structure that all major emergency response activities follow. Within the command structure, Housing Commission staff oversee and support the service provider branch, which includes Alpha Project for the Homeless, Veterans Villages of San Diego, Father Joe's Villages, a housing navigation unit, which includes SDHC Housing First San Diego staff, as well as staff from RTFH's Coordinated Entry System team, an Exit Strategies Resource Unit, an Outreach Strategies Unit, and an Intake Coordination Unit. The incident command objectives are to prevent and mitigate the spread of COVID-19, provide emergency shelter, temporary health and wellness services, maintain partnership, communication, and operational readiness and collaboration with local and regional partners, provide and maintain space for providers to maintain services, restore the convention center to normal operations, facilitate a system-wide homelessness response change through comprehensive exit strategies, and keep costs commensurate with the values at risk. Starting April 1st, the first cohort of shelter residents moved into the site, and over the coming days, approximately 770 total residents from our bridge shelters, Path Connections Shelter, and Father Joe's Interim Shelter moved into the convention center site. At the same time, families from Father Joe's Golden Hall Shelter were transitioned into individual hotel rooms to accommodate appropriate social distancing. Currently, Father Joe's and Path Interim Shelter remain at 50% capacity to accommodate social distancing, and persons identified as high risk for COVID-19 due to chronic health conditions are prioritized for those locations. As of this morning, there are 1,135 residents at the Operation Shelter to Home site, which leaves a further 360 beds still available. There are also approximately 250 residents at the interim shelters and 53 families in hotel rooms. Intensive focus on mitigating COVID-19 is supported by daily planning and tactical meetings attended by all major partners, including County Public Health, City Logistics, City Emergency Service, Fire and Police Department personnel, security personnel, Convention Center operations personnel, Housing Commission staff, and service providers. Health screenings for COVID-19 symptoms are conducted for all residents and staff on a daily basis. As many of you are aware, testing for COVID-19 has also commenced at the site, which includes both residents and staff. As of yesterday, approximately 1,100 tests have been conducted with only 2 confirmed positives, so there are about 300 results still pending. I have to share that the partnership and support from a variety of partners and agencies across the nonprofit and government spectrum and the amazing dedication of this shelter provider staff cannot be understated. I have never been part of something like this, and frankly, it's an amazing endeavor to be a part of and truly shows what can occur when people coming together in crisis can do to achieve a common goal. I'd also like to express my deep thanks to the board, Mr. Gentry and Mr. Davis for the support and resources that have been afforded the Homeless Housing Innovations team in this initiative. And I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge and thank the team members I have working on site every day at the Convention Center. Their daily dedication and commitment to the project's success is inspiring, and I'm deeply proud of their efforts. Thank you, Rick, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And to the board, and Lisa and her team have done great work at the Convention Center, and this is the one part of this organization, as you all know, that changes rapidly as we go. And as an agency, we continue to monitor and follow the guidance of medical experts and elected leaders at the federal, state, and local levels, especially state and local levels, as we determine appropriate actions both for staff and residents. And we will continue to do so going forward. We actually started adapting to this on March the 9th, after I'd canceled a trip to Washington, D.C. So we were actually about 3 or 4 days ahead of the national efforts. I'm very pleased to say that we will stay on top and abreast of this issue as we go forward. But I think we're doing a good job. I think we're serving your interest well. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hester.
Yes, go for it.
I just want to express my appreciation for this particular report that was given from President CEO Rick Gentry, and shout out to the team that's been in the front lines doing the work that needs to get done, trying to help people out. And I think it's really a testament of what our agency is about, and I'm proud to be a board member at this point. Thank you.
This is Chair Benvenuto. Thank you, Commissioner Hester. I think we all reiterate those points. And I'm very pleased that the testing has been in effect, that it is robust, that there's a lot of transparency there, and that we're doing what we can. I know that the Housing Commission staff have challenging jobs even in the best of times. So we very much appreciate their rising to the continued challenge of what the coronavirus is today. So if there's any other comments, I think now is the time to add them. We'll do one quick drill through the commissioners again and then conclude the meeting. Vice Chair Klumpner?
No comment, thank you.
Commissioner Akers is left. Commissioner Davis?
No comments. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Hester?
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubbard?
Wonderful report. No comment otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mitchell?
Thank you very much for your patience today and all the information. I'll try and get some additional offline, but no further comments.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to thank staff and everybody for bearing with us in the teleconference version of our meetings. And I think at this point, we can conclude the meeting at 10:15. We are now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.